Hello, students. This is the update that I'm making for JMS 200. This is the video lecture about current issues related to the film industry. I'm actually going to play a good chunk of a podcast. It's a podcast called The Business. It's from KCRW. That is the public radio station out of Los Angeles, California. It's an interview with the filmmaker Kevin Smith. Some of the stuff that he's talking about is quite inside baseball, as it were. So I'm going to try and break it down for you a little bit, explain some of the stuff they're talking about. But before I get into that, I'm going to go over some stuff about film distribution and the way that films are distributed. And I also want to say that in teaching this class, I've been teaching it for a couple years now. It is becoming increasingly more difficult to discern what is a film or a movie and what is a TV show or a web series or a webisode. What is the distinction between these? And on a certain level, these distinctions don't matter. It's all video content, and y'all, most of y'all, just want to watch stuff on your phones or on your laptops or on your big screen TVs whenever you don't care what it is. But there actually is a reason to know the difference. Hollywood gives out awards. They give out Emmys for television and they give out Oscars for film. So on that practical level, yeah, the industry has a lot of money and people's reputations invested in making sure there's a distinction between these different types of video content. But moving forward, it's really no difference. It's all the same. It's all video. Anyway, here we go. Share my screen. All right, here we go. Talking about issues of distribution in the film industry. Like my background there, like that. I'm in warp factor 6. I've gone into warp drive. Okay, anyway, this graphic illustrates a windowing release schedule. Windowing, okay, that's the term, windowing. And this is going back to 2014, and the model goes back even further than that. Films used to have different venues where they were released, and this was spread out over time. And what this graphic here illustrates, if you can read it up in the top left here, it says theatrical. That typically films would be exclusively in a movie theater where you pay money for admission, exclusively in a movie theater for a certain amount of time, and then they'd go to hotels and airlines, and then they would go to maybe a DVD or premium video like an HBO kind of service or something like that. And then they would go to other cable TV services. And then way over here on the right, you have broadcast TV. I know we haven't gotten to TV yet, but broadcast TV is a different financial model than cable TV. So there was these sort of different windows that the film would pass through, and there would be a promotional push when it reached every window. There'd be promotion when it was in the theater, and then there'd be promotion when it came out on home video, and then there might be promotion 2 years later when it finally comes to regular old broadcast television. Now, one reason that the windowing release schedule is falling apart is because of the internet. That if a film was released in some particular outlet, it becomes pirated and then freely available everywhere else. It's also enormously expensive. I mentioned that you have to do this kind of, or typically this promotional push, a promotional media campaign whenever a film reaches a new window. Oh, and windows could also be spaced out geographically as well. You could release a film in Asia first, and then in Europe, and then in North America, or vice versa. Every time you do that, you have to have a promotional push in every window or every geographic region. But back to what I said before, when films come out, the internet just rips them, someone pirates them, and they're freely available everywhere. So I think this windowing strategy is becoming a historical artifact. There was an attempt back in 2011 for a release strategy we now call day and date. Okay, that's what it's called, day and date. That is when a film is released in a physical movie theater on the same day that it's also available for watching at home, like through some type of streaming service or available online. This is, more than 10 years ago now, but Tower Heist, which is a pretty decent film, I think I saw it some time ago, attempted this, and the organization that actually owns movie theaters. Movie theaters make a tremendous amount of money from selling the goods at the concession stands, popcorn and overpriced soda. That's really where they make their money. That is literally where they make their money. A group of an organization of people who own movie theaters told a film studio, we are not going to put your film in our theater if you make it available for streaming at home. So the attempt was blocked. Tower Heist is now available for streaming, but originally it did get a good old-fashioned theatrical release. It got a good old-fashioned theatrical release where it was exclusively in the theaters, and that was resistance from the people who own the movie theaters. Okay, I mentioned day and date. That's a term that you ought to know. Snowpiercer is a science fiction film that did that release. There was also The Interview. Now, The Interview is a really, and I mean, I could do a whole lecture on the bizarre situation around The Interview, but there was a concern that North Koreans were going to start blowing up movie theaters. So The Interview got a day and day release before that became common because of this bizarre threat or concern about North Korean violence. Anyway, now we have the streaming services, and here's where the blending between TV and film and everything comes into play. Netflix, HBO Max, Disney, Hulu, Amazon Prime. We've also got Paramount Plus. NBC also has Peacock. Walmart is going to launch its own streaming service. There's so many different ways that you can consume video product, and many of these things that I've named have exclusive content. So that is a new distribution strategy, which is why I thought this episode of the podcast, The Business, was so interesting, because it talks about yet another different distribution strategy, Okay, Kevin Smith is a director. I remember when Clerks came out, it was some time ago, more than 20 years ago. I don't know, 25 years ago, something like that. And it got a lot of attention. Yeah, I was paying attention to stuff like this. It got a lot of attention because it was made for a very, very low budget. The director, Kevin Smith, had worked at a convenience store, and it's set in a convenience store, and some incidents from his own life inspired the movie. And it was just considered, very irreverent, very funny, and it made a lot of money for something that was so low budget. He has come back and made a part 3. This is now Clerks Part 3, but he's not releasing this in any kind of movie theater. He's not releasing it on a streaming service. He's touring the country, doing screenings in cinemas, but you got to pay, much more than a usual ticket price. But he's there to do like a Q&A. So it's like a live road show of the movie, and he feels like this is his best way to maximize the profits and maximize money from the movie. Anyway, here's some other. Now I'm only going to play a portion. I'm only going to play a portion of the podcast, but I'm going to try and explain some of it here. I mentioned that we have the strategy of exclusive content that streaming services are using, and they try and use their exclusive content to lure in new subscribers and to lock them up. Disney Plus used The Mandalorian. I signed up for Disney Plus because of The Mandalorian, and I'm still a Disney Plus subscriber. There's also a concept of ancillary markets. This is a term they use sometimes in business schools. One way to make money from media content is to generate an audience, and you're not making money directly from the media content, but you use that audience to buy something else. For example, maybe you have a funny webisode that you release for free online. Everyone can watch it for free, but at the end of every webisode, like a web TV show or something, you sell a t-shirt. So you're making your money that way. Amazon Prime is very, very clever, because if you sign up for Amazon Prime, you get access to different movies and TV shows on Amazon, but you also get free shipping on Amazon products. So the idea, Amazon may be losing money with its media industry right here, its media division. But if they can get you to buy toothpaste or cat food or shoelaces or whatever from Amazon, they're making their money that way. Okay. So they want you to get you to sign up for this deal but they really don't care about the videos and TV shows. They just want you to buy other stuff from Amazon. Someone in this excerpt of the podcast is going to talk about Disney trying a strategy like that. Kevin Smith in this little excerpt also talks about the cost to market and distribute a movie is excessive, can even be more than the cost to make the movie. You could spend millions to make a movie, and then the studio says it's going to cost us $20 million to market it, which is pretty extreme in my opinion. And there's also a discussion of residuals. This is money that actors get paid for subsequent use of a film or TV show. Like someone who appears on Friends or the Drew Carey Show or Seinfeld or something like that. They get paid for doing the work, and the show airs the first time and it gets high ratings, presumably big ratings. Well, every time there's a rerun, that actor is going to get paid again, and it goes down. It gets further and further down, so that 5, 6, 7 years later, the cost is, a fraction. I've seen copies of residual checks from Friends that are a couple of cents. It's like, what was the point of sending a check for 10 cents? Now, Kevin Smith talks about residuals that have to be paid by streaming services. And I had never thought about that. I thought that residuals were only paid if like the film or TV show is actually screened. But I guess if you have a film sitting, say, like in the Netflix, imagine the back of the library, imagine the back of the library. I guess if the film was only played 10, 20 times in a year, some super obscure thing, Netflix still has to pay those actors. And I guess, if you have enough content, if you have enough of a library, that becomes expensive. Even if you're only paying the actors 10, 20 cents for their movie from many years ago, I guess if you have enough of that stuff, it becomes expensive, and then it's no longer makes sense, financial sense, to maintain that big of a library. Anyway, here you go. I'll put some visuals up so it's not too dull, but I'm going to play an excerpt from this podcast, KCRW The Business, the episode from September 9th, 2022.
Point. Let me just briefly mention Disney. As we're speaking, the thousands of fans are gathering for their D23 conference, sort of like their Disney Con. They will be wowed with all this stuff. They'll get a look at all kinds of movies and this and that. Disney, meanwhile, is offering a lot of perks now for Disney Plus subscribers that really shows the might of a company like Disney. If you're a Disney Plus subscriber and you buy 2 rides on a Disney cruise, you get 2 more for free. You might get early access to a theme park. You might get merchandise opportunities. This is Disney showing what a multifaceted company can do, and trying to kind of even create something beyond what, say, an Amazon can provide, well beyond, because, Amazon doesn't have theme parks yet.
No, they don't. But it is a replication of the Prime model, where if you are an Amazon Prime customer, you get their video product for free. You get discounts at Whole Foods. There are other perks there. And Disney is looking at their assets and being like, wait a second, we're the Walt Disney Company. We are so much bigger than a streaming service. We have these theme parks that our fans love. We have cruises. We've got all of this other stuff. And it really is smart to mobilize that fandom and say, listen, you become a member here, we are going to give you the goods, and then you bring them in, and just like Amazon did, you slowly raise the price of those perks. And it makes perfect sense. This is also part of the metaverse strategy for Disney, where they're trying to use Disney Plus as this interface where someday you will have a Disney avatar and you will interact with other Disney fans and buy things and maybe go to a virtual theme park. All of this can be done through the Disney Plus app, and they're starting right now.
And of course, data. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
That's Matt Bellany, a founding partner of Puck News. In his 1994 debut feature, Clerks, Kevin Smith introduced the world to characters like Dante and Randall, the wisecracking retail slackers, respectively played by Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson. Of course, Smith himself played Silent Bob in that movie and a bunch of others. Since then, Smith has continued to grow what he calls the View Askewniverse, films, comic books, and more built around these characters. His latest addition to that world is Clerks 3. Neither Smith nor his characters are as young as they used to be, and Clerks 3 was very much informed by Smith's serious 2018 heart attack.
Yeah, oh my God, that made sense. Like, it's to me, like the idea of you have a finished movie and you're going to shelve it, like that's a little tougher to, or
well, that's where I'm going, because the Batgirl thing was, you were like, no. I read somewhere where you said you think it couldn't possibly be terrible. I think it potentially could be pretty not great, but wow, pulling the plug on a thing like that, that is amazing.
Well, somebody had seen it recently in those funeral screenings and said that it was a very expensive or overly expensive CW pilot.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, but those CW pilots put a lot of money in those WB coffers for many years. Comic book audiences are very forgiving. So it's not like, comic book audiences would have seen this and been like, oh, some would have, sure, but a lot of people wouldn't have. Fans just want to see their characters up there. I've since read many articles and I kind of understand their math. Like I'm not smart enough to understand the math of big business, but I guess an article I read about the inventory problem that all streamers are starting to face is something that never occurred to me, in as much as like, you got to pay residuals on all this. And if you're paying residuals on something that sits there with nobody watching it, then you're just throwing good money after bad. So, I'm not saying like I condone it, but I'm like, well, I understand what they're trying to do business wise. It's a new business. Streaming has only existed for what, a decade at this point? And now they're figuring out, can something live on a service forever? Or does it cost more money if nobody's watching it? Just like at any store, if it's not selling, they take it off the shelf. But I think it was just so shocking to hear that they had a $90 million basically finished movie that wasn't going to see the light of day. I got no real skin in the game and we were going to make a thing, but just as a fan of the platform, I actually like HBO Max as a streamer, man. I thought they were really good. And they got good quick, in as much as they haven't been around as long as Netflix, but they became a pretty dominant place to go, for me at least. But apparently somebody upstairs at WB Discovery knows better.
Well, I think that, they want to make DC into a Marvel-like entity, so maybe they felt like this is not the way. But on the other hand, I don't think it is actually possible to just toss a movie like that into the dumpster without creating terrible optics. And they're under so much financial pressure at this point that, you and I can't do the math. I certainly can't. But you sort of wonder whether this company has just been so burdened with debt and trouble that it's almost impossible to figure it out and make it work. And to have that thought about Warner Brothers is kind of
strange for such a behemoth.
Yeah.
But, like, I live in a microcosm of our business, and one could read the tea leaves financially all the time. I've had a lot of people be like, why can't you just release Clerks 3 the way everybody releases a movie? And I'm like, because it doesn't make financial sense at all. Like, this is a movie with an ardent following, but it's not worldwide. It's very localized in pockets. And the way we choose to release the movie is kind of makes the most financial sense. Like Lionsgate was all about making the movie. They weren't about spending another 10 to 20 million to release the movie in like 2,000 screens. And
10
honestly,
to 20 would be a bargain, honestly. I don't think it'd be a lot more.
Can I ask a question then?
I doubt I can answer it, but go ahead.
How could it be more when we live in a world where nobody watches television anymore? So commercials for a movie mean nothing. Back in the day, the most expensive part of releasing a movie was like the TV campaign, the commercials. So since that doesn't really exist, or shouldn't exist because it seems like a waste of money, where's all the money? Certainly not on newspaper ads or magazine ads.
Well, they do. I mean, they've got to go somewhere with the ads, so they go somewhere with the ads. They go
online. I go online. Yeah. It's free, Kim. Like, I market all my for free online. If I want to juice it up, I go to Facebook and I spend a little in the publicity department, or, spend a little publicity bucks. But like, it's ridiculous that the costs of releasing a movie have gone up when you don't do it the same way at all anymore. So for me, doing what we do makes absolute sense. This is a way for a movie to actually make money. And you just have to put in the time. Like, a lot of filmmakers might not be willing to like accompany their movie cross country and stuff, but that's why I did it. Because we were on the Reboot Roadshow tour and I was like, this is how I want to live my life. This is how I want to disseminate my art. I want to sit there and I'll make movies And then, you know, we could release them on Fathom screen so everybody could go see them if they're near a Fathom event screening. But I'm going to be on the road with my movie, sitting down every night with 1,000 people consuming this. And every night it was like going to a church where I was both the priest and Jesus at the same time. It was amazing.